Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Eyes on Geopolitics. We got a special guest today, Marc former CIA officer. He's got a new podcast called The Crisis Room. He's hosting it with Amber Rudd, former Home Secretary in the UK, and Mark Urban, investigative journalist and author. Check it out. The links will be in the description. It's called The Crisis Room. Mark, what's going on, bro?
Well, crazy times. Glad to be with you guys. I see Mick is joining us from an undisclosed location as he's running around the Gulf. Very brave of him. Probably the Four Seasons or a Ritz somewhere. But I admire his bravery and his dedication to the podcast.
It's undisclosed, man. I can't tell you which one it
Exactly.
is.
So obviously, what's happened last night? Crazy. The U.S. got into the fray, bombed Iranian nuclear sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. Used any people are talking anywhere from 12 to 15 B-2 bombers. Half of them were like a diversionary tactic. The other half went into Iran with, I believe, I saw a fighter escort. They dropped upwards of 14 GBU 57s, the MOPs, the 30,000-pound bombs on the sites, specifically at Fordow. The rest of the sites got about 30 Tomahawk cruise missiles from submarines in the Gulf. Pretty wild. I mean, we've been gearing up for this. I mean, obviously in the news we've seen like the movement of like our carrier groups and stuff like that. More and more tankers heading that way. So it was like the writing was kind of on the wall. President Trump said the other day, yesterday or 2 days ago, that he was going to give it 2 weeks and then make a decision. And then 24 hours it happened later. A lot to cover. Obviously, I just gave you the like bullet point stuff. Like Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, just had a presser saying that they obliterated the facilities and stuff like that, and it was the most magical attack in the history of attacks. And then right away, General Kane, joint chairman of the Joint Chiefs, says we don't really have a BDA yet. It's still being assessed, and it's going to take time. So thankfully, there was somebody who was sober on that presser. Not literally sober, but figuratively. I mean, or both. Anyway, guys, what are your thoughts, Mark? You go first. You're our guest of honor.
So well, I think you mentioned some things that are important. So like anything, and Jason and Mick will certainly understand this. BDA takes time. Bomb damage assessment takes time. Using words like obliterate, really not that smart. I think General Kane, who incidentally his last job was as the kind of the lead military advisor at CIA to the director, but I think he was much more sober and said that, we think we had good effects, but we just got to see. And that's going to take kind of all source intelligence collection, human intelligence, signals intelligence, imagery. Might take days, even weeks to figure it out. Looks like a very successful strike. Thank God for the incredible, planning and bravery of kind of the entire package. But we just don't know. And I think that ultimately this gets judged at the end of the day by the effects. One quick thing just to throw in there, and Dean, we can argue about this if you want.
I'm ready.
But no, but in some ways, this argument of whether we should do it or not is a legitimate one. But you know what? I have no tears shed for the Iranians. The rent was long overdue. Whether it's the Iranians supplying EFPs, the explosively formed projectiles, killed a lot of U.S. forces in Iraq, or their, of course, plots to kill President Trump and his former members of his national security team. I could go on and on. U.S. embassy bombings in Beirut, the Marine barracks. So you know what? If the Iranians got a little taste finally, because frankly, U.S. policy has been abysmal across multiple administrations, and we've never done anything to Iran. The fact that this president, who I think a lot of us have some questions about in terms of competence in his national security time, the fact that he's in charge now, probably not ideal. But you know what? Again, the rent was long overdue, and so I'm not shedding any tears.
Mick, thoughts? We got too many people here. If it was just me and you, I would totally fight you on this. But Mick, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'm certainly not going to argue with Mark on that because I agree. I mean, ultimately, Iran has himself to blame for this. They've been the biggest destabilizing force in the Middle East, whether it's Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, keep going, Yemen. They have caused this. They are a force for evil. To be frank, they up until the time of 9/11, Hezbollah, a group they formed and totally supported, killed more Americans than Al Qaeda, and they had the opportunity. President Trump and certainly President Biden as well gave them all the opportunity to come to the table to come up with an agreement that would have not only started calming down the Middle East, but it would have given sanctions relief. So it would have taken that off the burden of their own people, which are very competent, capable, modern, and would do quite well in the global economy. That's all on them. And then the continuous rhetoric, death to Israel, death to the United States. Um, I think this needed to happen, and because of the IDF eliminating the air and missile defense systems of Iran within the first 48 hours of their campaign, it really took the complexity of our operation, which I'm familiar with in my time on the Pentagon, down several notches. But with that said, fully executed, planned deception operations. That really shows you why the U.S. is the most capable, competent, and effective military in the world, probably in the world's history, because of technology and how we have learned to use it. So I know it sounded like I'm a cheerleader here, but I think it was the right decision. You drop 12 GBU 57s, 30,000-pound munitions on Fort Al. I would be surprised if there's much left, and even if there is something left down there around 300 feet, I don't know how you get to it. And to be frank, I think we should tell them, if you start rebuilding, we're going to do it all again. So just take off the nuclear, and think how much Iran has spent on a nuclear program when they could have spent it on their own people. Think how much they have spent on Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, all the militias in Iraq and Syria, instead of turning it into something that would have been beneficial to their people. So that's up to the Iranian people to decide. But I think we did make the right decision here, and the military performed extraordinarily.
Jay, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, they both said it quite well, but taking how I feel about the administration off the board, I have to agree that it was long overdue. And I don't know, given our 40-year history, who else would have done it. I don't necessarily agree with how the aftermath is handled, the press conferences, the misspeaking and all that other stuff. But I believe that it was necessary. And I think now, though, we need to focus on what comes next. Like, Mick alluded to, if they start building again, well, then they get it again. But I also think that we, meaning us, the Israelis, and anyone else getting involved, allies, need to think about the Iranian people and what comes next, because they're paying the price for this just as much as the Iranian government. And I just got a message from someone, I don't know how true it is, but apparently the Iranian parliament voted in favor of closing the Strait of Hormuz. I know that's not the be-all, end-all. It still has to get approved by the Supreme Council, but that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That is the ripple effect starting, the butterfly effect starting. So we'll see.
Yeah, that's what I want.
That's our biggest concern too. Actually, that was when it came to their retaliatory options. Closing the Strait of Hormuz is probably not something we can stop from happening. Our Navy is, as you might guess, the only Navy capable of clearing it, and it's going to take months. And then you're going to have to convince commercial shipping that it's actually fully cleared, and then they're going to have to convince their insurance company that that would majorly disrupt the flow of commerce, especially energy, out of the region. Yeah.
And gas will jump up to over $100 a barrel, or oil.
I'll throw out there the Iranian parliament doesn't mean anything. So it really is going to be their security council is going to make that final decision. And so we'll see. I mean, I think that's clearly one of the retaliatory options. That might hurt them just as much in terms of the Iranian economy. But but there are lots of things in their toolkit that they can do, whether it's ballistic missile strikes against U.S. forces. They're kind of using their very capable global terrorist apparatus to go after U.S. interests anywhere, whether it's embassies, whether it's U.S. military facilities, whether it's just American tourists. There's a lot of things that the Iranians can do. The question is, will they do that? Because the U.S. clearly back-channeled Iran, saying if you do this, much more is coming. And of course, we've also overtly said that as well. So I think it's a question of the Iranians having to save face with their own people, with the regime, versus really risking much more severe U.S. firepower coming at them. And if anyone tells you what they're going to do, they're lying. We just don't know. But the one key point on this, what kind of a whole bunch of us have done in the past, this is why the intelligence community is so important, because they're going to be laser focused right now on trying to figure out, not only assess analytically, but actually for collection on what Iran is going to do. So really interesting times ahead. And I just throw out there for discussion, kind of a weird time for the director of national intelligence to be on the outs with the president of the United States.
Yeah.
Well, she took the party line again. She was in the situation room yesterday because she said, "Oh, they can have them within weeks now." 2 months ago, it was they're not even doing anything, and it'll be years. Now it's all of a sudden, it feels like we're taking Israel's intel assessments over our own. To be frank, and to just spice up this conversation a little bit.
Well, one thing on that, D. I think one thing to Israel has a different calculus. So there's a legitimate debate.
Clearly,
what is the new intelligence from this Israeli dossier? But talking to the Israelis after October 7th, they're not going to. They don't give a shit about weeks, months, even a year arguing over that, because their tolerance for risk is much lower. And so Iran the Iranian nuclear program is an existential threat. The Iranians' defenses are so degraded now, this was a chance to take a shot. And whether their analysts differ with our analysts in terms of, John Ratcliffe, the CIA director, said this is like, sprinting down the field on a football field, yet you don't go across the goal line. And so at the end of the day, I understand the Israeli thinking on that, but I do think there's a legitimate question from the U.S. side in terms of analytic assessments. And that's where, Congress has to get in. And try to figure out exactly what did the Israelis provide, what was the U.S. analytic line, is Ratcliffe, the CIA director, and Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI chief, at odds over this? But looking at it from the Israeli perspective, I get it. They said, we don't really care if we're going to have an argument in terms of weeks, months, or even a year. It's an existential threat. Iran is vulnerable now, and we got to do this.
Well, yeah, you even heard from Netanyahu's speech after they started bombing the Iranian facilities last week, that they're a year away, or it could be even a couple of months. So like their assessment to weaponize it, right? Because they have reached the area where it's relatively easy to get the enriched uranium to the point where it's weapons grade. I'm going to bring this up. Go ahead, Mick. Sorry.
One point on that, there was no reason to do that. They're well past what they would need for civilian energy or medical.
Right.
So they're doing it up for a reason. They're at 60%, we think. It's it speeds up as you get higher to the top. 90 is what it needed. They didn't have to do that. They chose to do that. They did it for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think we all know the reason. Either they were going to do it, or they were trying to put pressure on the U.S. or to better their negotiation stance. And it was really dumb either way. They didn't have to do that. And the U.S. has given them options to take enriched uranium up to the needs of a civilian energy program from out of the country, like other countries in this region have agreed to, and they could have done it too.
Yeah, talking about the enriched uranium too, I saw a graph from the Financial Times, and it's very interesting in terms of the times when the uranium wasn't enriched almost at all was during the JCPOA years, and then the last couple of years it's gone up pretty dramatically. The same president got us out of the JCPOA, and as many beefs as you have with the JCPOA, it was an actual diplomatic resolution that stopped what the Israelis are screaming from the rooftops about, and that's enriched uranium. Frankly, also like the chat about we still want a diplomatic resolution to this, blah blah blah, is interesting when in one of the initial strikes the head negotiator gets schwacked, along with IRGC guys who have fun meeting Allah, and other nuclear scientists. The chief negotiator of the diplomatic talks kind of sends a bad sign, I would assume, like if you're trying to negotiate a highly complicated nuclear deal. Maybe I'm missing something.
Point there.
Thank you.
So the DoD, just for the record, not that it matters now, but the DoD was against getting out of the unilaterally withdrawing from the 2015 JCPOA. It wasn't a perfect agreement, but to your point, D, it did keep them well under the limits. We could have addressed, proxy force operations and other things because it wasn't addressed in that, and other sanctions.
Yeah,
And there's also a problem with who's going to enter agreement with us if we can just unilaterally withdraw every time we change, political parties. If you can't honor agreement from a past political party, then it makes a lot of these agreements, unless they're treaties, unless it's ratified, kind of challenged.
sure. A little bit more on blowback. Just to game it out a little. Like, let's say they start shooting some ballistic missiles at, Bahrain, our embassy in Iraq, or they spin up some Shia militias over there to attack the embassy. Where do we go from there if we start taking, casualties?
Oh,
I think it depends on the casualties. I mean,
yeah.
that's going to be, if it's a mass casualty event, a lot of Americans are killed. That's going to engender a very severe response. And there's so many nuances to this as well. If it's the Iranians shooting off a whole bunch of ballistic missiles to satisfy their own internal need to do so, and there's no U.S. casualties, and you kind of see it, that's how they call it a day. I think the U.S. probably will not respond. But the problem with that is that there's a lot of unknowns there. Ballistic missile. So it's like what you see in Israel. Sometimes they can be effective, and sometimes they can fall in an empty field. So that's why this situation, I think, is so dangerous now, and why I'm sure there's not just overt but certainly messaging that's going on behind the scenes, and probably along with using the offices of some of our Gulf allies as well to try to de-escalate this as much as possible. Because again, the President Trump, I don't think he wanted to do this. And of course, the MAGA world is going bananas now because they think it's another kind of never-ending war. If he can manage to kind of just have this be a one-off, I think he certainly walks away, probably with his MAGA coalition still okay. But if we start getting at it with the Iranians, that's a whole different story. So
Anybody?
Yeah, I think they'll probably try to design it similar to their response to the assassination of
yep,
Qasem Soleimani. Right? It was a
yep.
lot of boom, but not a lot of impact. So they control the media, so they say they did a lot more than they did. But to Mark's point, that's a difficult thing to calculate. If you get through and you kill a bunch of. Now that said, uh, CENTCOM did a lot of work to get people out of harm's way. They moved, naval vessels out of Bahrain. They moved aircraft out of Al Udeid. I wasn't joking when I was like, my hotel I was just in was full of people who had been moved out to the point where they will hit an empty base in a Gulf country, and Iran doesn't have a lot of friends, but they're going to lose a lot if they start just
Yeah.
launching ballistic missiles into these neighboring Gulf countries. So it's a risk on many levels.
So prior to the spin up to this, like, there was always talk, and we've talked about it many times on the show, about how if we did hit the nuclear facilities, it would really only set it back 6 months to a year, right? Their nuclear program. Um, what if that's the case? Even though we did drop 12 or 14 GBUs, and like you would assume that's like fucking mush there now. You did see there were some satellite photos as well of trucks leaving the Fordow facility like hours before the strikes. So let's say they moved the enriched uranium to another facility. They said Isfahan is a lot more as fortified, or almost as fortified as Fordow was or is. What happens if our BDA is done and then like intel comes out that we really haven't like completely wiped it off the map, and they can reconstitute it within a year or something like that? What's the move there? Just continue to hit them?
Maybe. I mean, so again, that's why the intelligence collection is so important, and the BDA, but ultimately, I think this should be seen kind of as part of a kind of longer term campaign, and the Israelis will see that this for sure, and perhaps they're the ones who are going to going to hit it again. One of the things, though, is that so many people are making this comment. I mean, I'm guilty of this as well. So the last thing I want to do is go on a program like this or on TV talk about the intricacies of enriched uranium. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And the same thing. So in terms of how much is the Iranian program degraded, well, there's a couple things that we know. Israel killed 9 of the leading nuclear scientists. They also destroyed the archive of the Iranian program, which was important because that's the kind of the historical knowledge of it. They're meticulously going after 5 of these 6 sites. So the idea that it's only been a bit degraded. I mean, I think when people start saying that, there's a political bent to this. I think it's going to be pretty significant. But we also shouldn't say it's been obliterated, like I think the president and Pete Hegseth said, because nobody says that. The kind of the sober people in the national security world will say, and there'll be some kind of assessment on it. But I think it's not going to be in the realm of months. Clearly, it will be in the realm of years, and that's something that I think that Israeli and U.S. national security planners probably thought was enough to take such type of action. But to say it's going to be obliterated gets a little silly. And of course, to say that it's only been degraded a couple months, same thing. Come on, there's just too much that's happened.
True, I agree, and I think Iran said. Ahead, oh, sorry, Jason, go ahead, man.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna briefly say, we don't know what we don't know. So the intelligence community, I mean, I'm obviously biased, and so is Marc, should lead this effort to determine how much it was degraded. Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Is there something that we don't know in the works that wasn't struck? Iran promised to get a nuclear weapon or take every step possible to get a nuclear weapon if they were struck. And now they can, if we're looking at it from their perspective, that's even more important. So the threat isn't over. I think we have to be very careful not to, do a touchdown dance and act like this is over. It's simply part of a larger effort against Iran, all their destabilizing actions in the region, and their pursuit of a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, Jay, go ahead.
Sorry. No, it's just my 2 cents added to this. And I'm like Marc. I'm not a nuclear scientist. I don't know anything about this stuff. We also have to take into account the IAEA's monitoring of the release of radiation or radiological, debris, whatever, because it may not even be safe for them to go back in there and restart the program. We just don't know. So it's a bunch of unknown unknowns. So
good point.
Hey D, I got something funny for you.
Tell me.
So, and I'm reading this off of social media, so I can't claim credit for this. But there is some weird kind of like sexual thing with these names of these operations. Rising Lion and Midnight Hammer. It sounds like erectile dysfunction supplements.
Yeah.
That you hear. I mean, come on.
Yeah, that's what they call me when I get a little bit too drunk and I start texting my ex-girlfriends at midnight.
So I got to go to Mick. So Mick, you're at senior levels of DoD. Who makes up these names?
I don't know. I mean, they got a sense of humor.
It's pretty good.
I don't know. I can't tell you because I actually
Operation Pound Town.
Yeah. These names are going to start popping up in roadside gas station.
It's probably a Lance Corporal in the Marine Corps. That's probably
That's so funny.
But who makes these up? So anyways, I thought I'd throw that out there.
They might have like a name generator, like a random name generator.
I don't know.
Doesn't sound random.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Sounds like midnight gas station.
Somebody's projecting.
Midnight Hammer does sound like a gas station dick pill brand.
It does.
Yeah.
Rising Lion. Come on.
Yeah.
Sorry, I diverted.
No.
Serious
funny.
podcast.
I mean, I'm pretty much, like, for the most part, done with all my notes and stuff like that. What the weird thing is, like, how, obviously this is taking, this is above the fold. This is like what everyone's talking about. But, like, Gaza's still going on. Israel, does on occasion go into Syria and hit areas in there. Lebanon as well. Mostly Gaza, right? Because what's going on, especially at the aid stations the last few days. People going to get food and they get smoked by the IDF. So I don't want people to forget what's going on there. Obviously, the Iranian regime is bad news. No one's a fan of them. Oh, I want to get your assessments on like there is a message coming out of the White House and the administration where like, oh, we don't want regime change or whatever, which they're saying that because they want to placate half of their base, that like we're not going to send troops in, it's not going to be another war like we're used to. Who are outside of the regime? Who's the resistance in Iran that could? I know we see the Shah now, or the Crown Prince out on doing hits and stuff like that on TV, but the actual resistance in Iran, who could possibly be the people that take the mantle if the regime were to fall?
That is a good question.
I mean, it's the people. I mean, so look, there's been popular uprisings in Iran against the regime, and we saw this with, of course, the all the protests against the hijab. So there's tremendous popular discontent, but is there some kind of resistance movement to support? I mean, there are certainly groups there, but I think we got to be really careful on that. And I think the administration is 100% right. Whether they're doing it to placate their base, but don't go down that road of promoting this. Now, if things happen kind of organically, that's a different story. But let me throw one thing for Jason and Mick and D before we leave, because you look at this and President Trump has, I think, undertaken an action which a lot of us who've been his critics are applauding now. But we're not consistent on doing the right thing because we are still kind of in the process of abandoning Ukraine. And I think that's an important point as Trump is being lauded for this from many of us in kind of the national security blob. But Ukraine's still out there, and there's no signs that we're going to do anything in terms of supporting the Ukrainians. And so one of the things in kind of the Ukrainian circles that I kind of dabble in is that there is some concern there. That this certainly is not necessarily going to distract, but that hey, Trump might be lauded for this, but hey, what about us? Your guys' thoughts?
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I just don't know how much support the Shah has in Iran, so I can't speculate. I'm guessing probably not that much. And I talk to people out here in the Gulf who share that opinion, so I'll defer to them. There's a lot of different groups in Iran. It's not a homogenous society. They got a lot of courage, me and Marc's folks, if you will. There's plenty of groups that would, and the people in general, like every woman in Iran would like to see this change. I mean, they're completely oppressed in a horrible way. And I think any young person that wants a chance at modernity wants to get away from them. But that has to be organic. If we try to, do it again, like we've done this before, in Iran at least, you own it, right? And then it's not organic, and then whoever comes next will play to that. But the other point for Ukraine, I totally agree. We did the right thing here. We're not doing the right thing in Ukraine. They shouldn't have any doubt that they get 100% support from the United States. We're the leader of the free world. They're a democratic country that was invaded unlawfully and unprovoked by Russia, who is one of our top two adversaries, and I'd say our most dangerous one. If we abandon them, that'll set us there.
Look what we could have done or could be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the main difference is Russia has nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
That's right.
Isn't that the reason why? Like, we're not actually pushing it all the way?
I would argue we have an overblown panic and worry over their use of nuclear weapons.
Sure.
That's what really, tainted some of the Biden administration's really good things they did, was that they were always hand-wringing over this, and clearly Trump feels the same.
I think we should have said before it started, since we had obviously very good intelligence that it was going to happen, we should have told Russia, if you go in, we're going to support them 100%. We're going to give them every weapon that they need to defend themselves. So like Marc is alluding to, not wringing our hands on F-16s and Abrams tanks and ATACMs and all. We should have just said, hey, it was your choice. You invaded that country. We're now supporting. We wouldn't be supporting them if you wouldn't have done that. But we didn't do that, and we put ourselves in a bind, I think. But that's a bind that we created. It's a bind we could have changed.
And it's not too late to change it.
You're
We
right.
can still do it. Two things can be true at once. We can do what we did in Iran and still say, okay, Russia, back to you. So
Ain't gonna happen.
yeah,
Not with this
I know,
administration, but yes, in theory.
Yeah.
All
I
right,
don't think it's
guys,
going to happen either. All right, Mick, get
I
the hell
gotta,
out of here. Thanks for
yeah, I
stopping
gotta
by.
jump.
Thanks for
I
staying
gotta jump.
safe, too. Be
Jason,
careful.
that 5-star hotel.
Yeah.
We're worried about you.
Yes.
Yeah, get room service. Let me know what the room service menu is
Grab me
like.
some of those mints off of the pillow.
All right. All right. Next,
Thanks, Mick.
you'd be surprised where my next stop is, probably, but
Where do
I'll
we
call you
find
from there.
where do we find such brave men?
Well, apparently at 5 stars hotels. That's what John tell me. All
By the way, if
right,
something
bros.
happens to you, we're
Yeah.
gonna feel really shitty, and we're gonna have to fucking cut this.
I know. Knock on
Yeah.
wood.
Stay, be
Have a
safe.
good wake for me. Have a good
Yeah.
Irish wake
Stay
for me,
safe.
bro.
Be
All right, buddy.
safe, brother.
I'll
See ya,
talk to you
Mick.
guys.
All right, just to wrap up, thanks, Mick, for that. Of course, check out Mick's links that are in the description. One more time, Marc, your new podcast, The Crisis Room, with Marc Urban, Amber Rudd, some heavyweights. Amber Rudd being a former Home Secretary of the United Kingdom. Marc Urban, a distinguished investigative journalist, wrote a great book about the SAS and does a ton more work. You can find it everywhere, wherever you find your podcast. The links will be in the description. You can check out Marc there. I just wanted to get a link in there before we ended. Just to wrap up, I'm worried about the blowback, to be honest, right?
I was going to say, yeah.
I mean, we did touch on it slightly and stuff like that, but yeah, I mean, in terms of the blowback, because what happens if they do kill 5 or so servicemen and women, and we're not really the type of country that's going to take that lightly.
Nope, it's on then. Yep.
Right.
Yep. So look, there's consider. You should be worried. I mean, nothing is free. There's cost benefit analysis, and clearly the president has received, and I would say, correct analytic assessments saying that there might be Iranian retaliation, and so obviously we're trying to dissuade them from doing anything, but they certainly could, and Americans could be harmed because there's one of the interesting things to note though is that when I was working with the Israelis over the years, they're actually much more willing to take casualties. 24 Israelis have been killed in their kind of the ballistic missile fire from Iran. I think if 24 Americans are killed, there's going to be an absolute political kind of nuclear meltdown, no pun intended here. But the Israelis are certainly more willing to take casualties than we are.
Yeah, and I think, since last night, I've gotten numerous texts and phone calls about here in the United States, should we be worried? Everybody used the term sleeper cells, I guess because that's the thing that's being touted in the media, so they're like, what should we do? And I'm like, okay, well, you're stay vigilant as always, but live your life, but it is a legit concern from people closer to home, including my mom. She called me. She's like, are you going to be okay? I'm like, I'm sitting in Pennsylvania, but
Jason, there's a key thing on this. We also so obviously the FBI should be on this, but it's also an FBI that whose mantra under the new leadership has changed. They're running around doing border stuff. And going after cartels, and so have the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, have they been kind of seen limited personnel and resources? Are we up to the task right now? As so much of the attention and local law or federal law enforcement, but domestically has moved to the border. I don't know.
Just seems like a lot of chaos. And now my next question, Jason, perfect, spot on, was in terms of hitting us here. What are the chances of that happening? I mean, I'm sure Iran's got their hands full at the present moment. Because my buddy asked me the same thing. And I'm like, listen, even if we did trade fire and stuff like that, they probably are using a lot of their bandwidth in terms of protecting themselves right now to be giving command and control over. But in a year or so, they don't forget, right? And if the regime's still around in a year or so, what's to stop them from doing something on American soil? And once that happens, it's game on. We're going to forget the last 25 years and just be let's invade another country again. Let's get these guys eating French fries, American made French fries. Let's build some Burger Kings in Tehran. It's going to be a crazy couple weeks, see where it goes. Israel has continued. Israel initially, after the bombing went down last night, said that they were going to hold off on bombing Iran again. They have since started to bomb Iran again, solid 12 hours. And they say the reason why is for other goals that are trying to be reached. Other goals, I don't know what that means. Marc, maybe you can enlighten me, my layman ass.
Well, I mean, they're going to go after the ballistic missile capability. Obviously, they're going after the launchers, but also the kind of the whole production factories, the whole kind of Iranian military-industrial complex. Look, Israel has their boot on the neck of Iran. It is insane for them to stop. Now, they do have to kind of keep in mind how far are they going to go in terms of if the regime is threatened. But let's be careful on having the Israelis or dictating to them what they're going to do in terms of kind of continuing on. And at some point, it will stop. These the other part, the Israelis are probably running out of interceptors in terms of their own air defense. The pace for their air force has been just brutal, and so I wouldn't expect this to last all that much longer if there is no significant Iranian retaliation.
Oh, brother, a lot of questions coming up. So, guys, keep your eyes on this. I mean, obviously, everybody will be. Marc, this was great.
Thanks.
Any last thoughts?
No, I mean, like Marc just said, I think Israel is going to do what Israel does. I don't think it's going to do any good for us to tell them, hey, it's time to stop. They're going to stop when they're ready and when they need to. This is kind of outside of what we were just talking about, but I don't see regime change anytime soon, honestly. I think everybody's just going to, do the whole, hey, you got popped in the mouth, Iran. It can happen again. We hit you with a right, we got a left. I think it's just now wait and see and, just be on our toes.
Marc Polymeropoulos, MSNBC contributor, The Crisis Room, new podcast. Check it out. The link is in the description. Really good one. I've been enjoying the episodes. All the boys, Andy, Mick, all our links are in the description. If you want to find out more, check it out down there. And the best way to support the show, you get both Team House and Eyes On ad-free and early, is patreon.com/the Team House. That's the best way you can support the show. Please do. And yeah, guys, thanks for this. This was great.
Thanks. Great seeing you guys.
Good to see you, Marc. You
Awesome.
too. Take care, gents.
Hey guys, it's Jack. I just want to talk to you for a moment about how you can support the show if you've been watching it, enjoying it, but you'd like to get a little bit more involved and help us continue to do this. You can check out our Patreon. It is patreon.com/the Team House. And for $5 a month, you can get access to all of these episodes of the Team House ad-free. The same goes with our affiliated podcast, Eyes On, with Andy Milburn, Jason Lyons, Mick Mulroy. That one, you will also get all of those episodes ad-free. And you support the channel and the show, and we really appreciate it. The Patreon members are literally what has helped this company, this small business survive, especially during our early years. And you are what continues to help this thing going, even as we navigate the turbulent world of YouTube advertising. So we really appreciate all of you guys. There's going to be a link down in the description to that Patreon page, and there is also going to be a link to our new merch shop. So if you guys want to go and get some Team House merchandise, we got stickers, and we also have patches. And I should mention, if you sign up for Patreon at $10 a month, we will mail you this patch as well. So we really appreciate that. But they're also for sale on the merch shop. And additionally, they got t-shirts up there, water bottles, a tote bag, coffee mugs, all that good stuff. So please go and check them out and support the show. We really appreciate it, guys. Thank you.